2 years ago, my daughter was taken from me. She was my everything, a precious jewel in my life. I remember, even now, how tightly she held my thumb in her little hand when I first held her. Her first steps as she toddled into my arms from across the living room with those bright blue eyes and that heartwarming smile. She used to giggle and drool on my chest when she slept, and even though she ruined every shirt I had, as I watched her little chest rise and fall, I loved her more than I ever thought possible. Her mother, Mary, was over the moon when she saw her. If you think I loved her, you should have seen Mary. There's nothing in the world stronger, or more beautiful than a mother's love. We named her Lily, after Mary's grandmother. Lily was our little bundle of joy, a beacon of hope in our lives. The first year hit us harder than most. You underestimate how much money it takes to raise another person, and when doctor visits and babysitting fees start to stack up, you realize just how expensive existence is. On top of bills and necessities, Mary had a tough time recovering. Postpartum depression swallowed her whole. It's the stillness, the complete absence of light in a loved one's eyes as they fight that mental hell that kills you. It's knowing that they're right there and yet a whole world away, suffering silently. It's the quiet blaming you put on yourself for any little thing you do that you think threw them there. It's the slow resentment that builds and the guilt that eats at you because you know deep down it's not their fault. Mary was the strongest person I'd ever known, and although she would peak out from then on, she never fully recovered. She was thrown in a hole too deep and too dark to climb out of, so she tried as best she could to live in that darkness and make that hole her new normal. When Mary's maternity leave ended, we had to leave Lily in daycare. We were nervous wrecks without her. I couldn't exactly keep her with me while I worked at the factory, and I doubt Mary's bosses would have been thrilled to have her in the office. Although it would have been adorable, Lily was a trooper, the happiest little girl alive. Although she couldn't talk too well, she was more than happy to tell us all about her adventures stomping around town on daycare trips. She loved the park especially. After she was done on the playground, she'd feed the ducks and then sit to eat right there with them. She even made us pack a separate lunch just for her favorite duck on park days. Lily loved that park. I think she knew that too. I think that's why she let us find her there. I had gotten the call around lunchtime that she was missing. I had called Mary, and she nearly had a breakdown on the phone. My supervisor tried stopping me, but when I explained to him what had happened, he let me go. I found out later that he had got together a few of the guys to help with the search party. It was 16 long hours before we got the news. The police had found her stuffed in a ditch hidden behind the pond. They had to call in animal services to help retrieve the body. The problem was that whenever someone got too close, the ducks would charge to protect her. We couldn't bury her until half a week later. Once her body was no longer deemed evidence. Mary followed shortly after. When they got the guy, I pushed for the death penalty. The coroners had said it was as if her body had been scrubbed clean before she was dumped. The lack of sufficient DNA evidence to charge him with anything else coupled with the fact he was a first-time offender meant the best we could get was 25 to life. I was beyond anger. He'd get to spend the rest of his miserable life being pampered in a cell, being fed 3 meals a day, while I had to pick up the pieces as I buried my wife and child. I had begged God for justice, for that son of a bitch to get what he deserved, but justice never came. When I heard he was out on bond, I became obsessed. I felt myself going mad every day that bastard was allowed to breathe another lung full of air. Even though I was still living and breathing, he killed us both the day he took my Lily. I died the night I picked my daughter up out of that hole as if she were a piece of trash tossed into the bushes. When the lawyers turned their backs on me, I decided to take matters into my own hands. The criminal justice system was nothing more than a circus act, and I was a monkey dancing to its beat. I took what little I had left over from the lawyer fees and bought a revolver and a box of bullets. I only needed 2. One for him, and one for me. The night before I did it, I went to church one last time. Drunker than I'd ever been, I walked into that warmly lit temple and let the Lord have it. I had prayed for his death day after day, week after week, but every time I did, God failed to deliver. As I sat on that pew and sipped that bottle dry, I told him that if he couldn't deliver me peace, then I'd find it from the devil. As I drunkenly trudged through that cold night, bitter and angry, I heard the voice of a woman calling my name. I looked around, but I couldn't spot anyone. Still, I heard it clear as day. It followed me every step of the way home, and that night, she visited me. I had been having the same nightmare over and over again since it had happened, reliving that stomach-turning moment I walked across those bushes to find my little girl face down in the mud. That night, however, was different. That night I was reliving the first time I had ever laid eyes on my sweet little Lily. I felt the soft pressure as her little hand took hold of my finger and felt that same happiness wash over me. For the briefest of moments, I knew happiness again. I was so enveloped in that warmth that I didn't feel her watching me. "She's adorable," she said softly. She was dressed like the nurse that had delivered my Lily, but her eyes were black as coals. I was too shocked to say anything. In an instant, fear had gripped me tight. "I heard your prayers," she continued, gently placing a finger in front of Lily. "I'm afraid she doesn't work that way." I heard Lily giggle as she let go of my thumb and grabbed her index finger. When I finally regained my composure, all I could ask was, "Who are you?" "I'm someone who can help," she spoke, offering a gentle smile. "I was like you once too." Not exactly. For me, it was my son. I felt that same heartbreak that's eating you away every second of the day, that mental minefield that comes with every waking moment, and the monsters that follow you into your dreams. I know what it's like to lose your whole world. Tears had begun to well up in the dark pools of her eyes. I watched the tears silently fall as Lily wrestled with her hand. "I want to help you. I want to help you because I know she won't." My eyes narrowed. I knew what she was. I knew where she came from and what she wanted. And out of everything in that moment, what really scared me was the overwhelming sense of sincerity in her voice. "What do you mean she won't help?" I croaked finally. Even in the haunting, bottomless darkness of her eyes, I saw sincere sadness dance across her face. "She never knew how," she whispered. "The night I found out the truth was the night I sold my soul. I made her promise to torture the bastard that stole every ounce of happiness away from me. The conditions of the deal were that once I allowed her in, she would be in full control of my body until either we both perished or she was exorcised. She explained that in the event of the latter, although I would be free from her, she wouldn't rest until she found me again. Lastly, she emphasized that my soul would forever be bound to service hell, that I would be disfigured and my spirit branded unfit for God's compassion and entry into heaven. As far as I was concerned, there was no such thing as his compassion, and hell couldn't be worse than what I had to live through every time I opened my eyes. I agreed and let her loose, and she would go on to honor our agreement to the letter. I watched as that stain on humanity went through every horror the body would physically allow. I watched for the first time as a soul was dragged and broken in hell. From time to time, I still think of it. You're probably thinking it was torture being trapped with a demon in your body. That once you sign yourself over, you're subject to the worst punishment imaginable. You'd be wrong. The reason it's so hard to exorcise a demon from a body isn't because they're fighting to stay, it's because we want them to stay. In exchange for your body, they create a reality where you regain everything you lost. She let me live to see a life that was so unjustly taken. I saw my daughter grow. And I died a happy man with my wife alongside me over and over and over. I never knew suffering while I was there, I never knew pain. She explained to me that those who sought the devil out willingly knew suffering he could never replicate, and that those brave enough to ask for his help would receive it in full and so much more. That even though God never knew how to help, the devil wouldn't hesitate to try and learn how. The night that priest ripped that demon from my body, God took my life a second time. Ever since then, I've been wandering the streets looking for her, and as I walk those roads, I can hear it. When my soul was freed, I gained something. I don't know if it's an extra sense or something that's always been there, now I can hear them. In every home, across every alley in every street all over the world, I hear those desperate prayers for help. Prayers almost identical to the ones I sent as I boiled alive in agony those 2 years ago. The suffering pleas of the world are almost as deafening as the silence that echoes back. I've learned the dark secret she whispered in my ear that fateful night: the devil helps those who seek him. But he takes far more than they could ever imagine. As I continue my endless search, I wonder if there's a way out of this hellish pact. I roam the shadowed streets, a tormented soul bound to the darkness, seeking redemption from the diabolical bargain I struck. But the further I journey, the more I realize that escaping the clutches of the devil is an elusive dream. My senses have sharpened, and I can hear the prayers of despair echoing through the night. Desperate souls, just like me, calling out for salvation. I've tried to help them, to warn them of the dire consequences, but my words go unheard. The devil's deals are seductive, offering a glimmer of hope in the darkest of times. As I traverse the gloomy alleyways, I find myself in a forgotten part of the city, where the air is heavy with malevolence. There, in the dimly lit corner of a forsaken building, I sense her presence. The woman who first ensnared me in this wretched pact, she appears before me, her eyes still as black as coal, her sinister smile unchanged. "You seek an end to this torment," she whispers, her voice a haunting melody. But there is no escape. Desperation grips my heart as I implore her for a way out. I've seen enough suffering, enough torment, to last a lifetime. The voices of the damned souls continue to haunt me, and I yearn for a chance at redemption. She gazes at me with an inscrutable expression. "There is only one way," she murmurs, her tone chilling. "To break the chains that bind you, to release the grip of the devil, you must find another soul, willing and desperate, to take your place." The weight of her words crushes my spirit. To save myself, I must condemn another to the same eternal damnation that I endure. It's a grim choice, a twisted form of salvation, but as the voices of the desperate souls grow louder, their cries echoing through the night, I realize that I cannot endure this torment any longer. The devil's deal was struck in the depths of my despair, and now I must find someone equally desperate to take my place. With a heavy heart and a heavy burden, I set out on my grim mission, hoping to find a willing soul who, like me, is willing to make a pact with the devil. The city's shadows become my constant companion as I search for the next victim, knowing that the cycle of suffering will continue, as it always has and always will. In the end, the devil's bargain is a dark and relentless cycle, where salvation and damnation are intertwined, and the price of freedom is paid in the suffering of others.